Welcome to the Zachrilege cast. Dave Warnock, how's it going tonight?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Okay, so what kind of beverage do you have for this evening's show?
Well, I've got bourbon in a plastic cup. How's that?
That's classy right there. Yeah, I got my Dragon's Milk, my bourbon barrel-aged stout, number
Nice.
one draft pick beer, and conveniently found that the place around the corner from me at work has it the cheapest in town, so it's really lovely.
Lovely.
So why don't we start sort of at the beginning? So you got kind of swept up in, I don't even know what it's called, like sort of a hippie Jesus 70s thing. So how did that kind of happen? And then what led you to kind of break up with Jesus?
Well, when you date someone for 37 years and you realize you're the only one on the date, you just kind of think, okay, it's time to break this thing up. I was in the Jesus movement. Yeah, it was kind of a follow-up to the hippie movement of the 60s, the Jesus movement of the 70s. I got caught up in that and spent the next 35, 36, 37 years just living as an evangelical, charismatic Christian, much of that time as a pastor, always in leadership of some sort, oftentimes on staff at churches and things like that. Combined my time between Arkansas and Tennessee, hence the Southern accent.
Well, I always appreciate having guests on who have a Southern accent because in the South, it seems like people ask you, they don't ask you if you're religious, they ask you what church you go to. It's kind of like a warm up. That was like when I first moved from Pittsburgh to Nashville, like that happened. Actually, someone asked me what church or if I went to a particular church, and I just said no because otherwise I had no answer.
Yeah.
But was it I mean, okay, so a 37-year marriage, I'm sure there were ups and downs and hopefully some ups. But when did like kind of the doubts creep in, and was there like a eureka moment, or was it kind of a gradual thing for you?
Yeah, the doubts. I mean, like you said, that's a good way to put it. 37-year relationship, marriage, whatever. Kind of corresponded with my real marriage, which broke up not long after my breakup with Jesus. The doubts surface, they come and go. And there are things, the kind of Christianity that I was in was the Bible's true, the Bible's inerrant, everything in the Bible is real and true. And God is supposed to be present and involved with our lives. He answers prayers, He leads us and guides us. So it's not a distant, uninvolved God. It's a very present and active God. And so over the course of many years, you begin to see that the times when you would think an active and present God would show up and do things, help you with things, or prevent things from happening or whatever. And over the course of time, when that just doesn't happen over and over and over again, and it just becomes obvious that there's nobody there but you doing the things. So it's a series of doubts and questions that you push them down, you set them aside, and then eventually they become. It's just an accumulation of issues that are unresolved, and so you just kind of it adds up after a while. It absolutely adds up.
What was part of you getting out? Was you getting kicked out by somebody who was in the church that you were working for?
Well, the last church I was on staff, yeah, I did get fired from that position because I was too independent. They told me I wasn't. It was a very narcissistic, controlling environment. The lead pastor, was very controlling and narcissistic, and he and I just didn't get along. And the pattern was that everyone eventually got fired from that church. So it wasn't something new for me. But yeah, that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. And my daughters were caught up in the church. They're the guys they're married to were on staff, not on staff, but in a student intern program, and they got turned against me by the pastor, and that began my quest to really begin to look into this faith that I'd given my life to. What was it all about? Was it real? Was it true? And that started me down the road of searching and questioning and examining my faith. And after a year and a half of that, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't true and it wasn't real. And I had believed a lie all these years. So I let it go.
Well, how isolating is it? Because this is the story I tend to get from people who are believers and then got out, especially when you're like a pastor and you're so involved. Is it super isolating because you're not even like allowed to really have doubts, right? Like to even say, hey, I'm not sure about this to people and have conversations, right? You have to kind of do it by yourself. Is that right?
Yeah. The environment, they give lip service to the idea of doubts and questions, but the questions are only allowed if there's a predetermined answer. So there's not really a place for asking sincere questions about your faith. And so, yeah, it is very isolating. And I didn't know anyone that had actually been in a situation like me where he lost his faith and came to the conclusion he was an atheist. That was brand new for me. And I didn't know anyone like that had been through that. I didn't have anyone to talk to. So I felt very isolated, and it was very disorienting and confusing and traumatizing, honestly.
Well, you mentioned your daughters, you mentioned your ex-wife. So when you lost religion, didn't you lose family members as well?
Yeah, I've got 3 kids. They're all married adults. I was married to 37 years marriage. And they, my daughters, like I said, were too enmeshed in that church. And so they essentially were put in the position of having to choose between their dad and God, and being the religious zealots that I raised them to be. They chose God. And they couldn't come to grips with the fact that their dad no longer believed in God and that I was an atheist. And that's just been too much for them to absorb. So they've had to kind of distance themselves from me, and have not had to, but that's the route they've chosen to do. My son and I are on good terms, and he wasn't caught up in that same church, so it didn't have the same effect on him.
Okay, well, did you discover the clergy project while you were getting out, or was that later?
Yeah, that was one of the first connections I had with this side of the world, the ex-Christian side of things. I just, because of the internet, I was able to find some connections on the clergy project and connect with some other ex-pastors. And I started finding other people who had been through these kinds of events. And so that was the beginning of me finding a new community, which was life-saving for me.
Well, it's a good thing you're able to. Yeah, you lose a community and then you have to put one together.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if we can get your origin story correct. So in most superhero origin stories, the hero gets some kind of weird powers that are also a burden. So in your case, your superhero power is mortality. So how did your ALS diagnosis turn into a power for you?
Mortality, yeah. The idea of death, that's a subject that is very difficult in the Christian world, because the evangelical world I was in taught that this life is a temporary life, that our real existence is about eternal life. And I call that a fetish for the afterlife, and that we taught that what we're doing now in this life is preparation for our life in heaven. And obviously the flip side of that is, if you don't get things right in this life, you're going to have a really, really poor eternal life in hell. Letting go of those ideas, what you're left with is the reality that this life is all there is. And so that's what my Dying Out Loud campaign is about, is talking about living and dying as an atheist, and what living can look like and should look like if we realize, and once we realize, that this is the life we have. Now, what are we doing with it? Are we doing our best? Are we doing what we want to do? Or are we just kind of drifting through the days and merely surviving instead of living? And so that's what I have. When you said my ALS diagnosis has given me the gift of mortality, that's really a pretty good way of putting it, because it's shaped the way I look at things, the way I look at life. It's allowed me to focus on what's really important, and it's caused me to start talking about these things, and that's what's led me to be on shows like this and to travel around and talk at meetings, and it's been a very gratifying experience for me, and one that I have found to really do some good for people and have positive impact and be inspirational to a lot of people. Some who are just going through what I would call normal life, where there's not a lot of stress and trauma and drama, but they're realizing that they're not doing it the way that they would want to. And other people who are facing some very serious things, who have found encouragement in the things I'm talking about. So yeah, I am grateful for this mortality superpower I've been given. I've even got the cape, the hood with it to go.
Nice. Yeah, no, no mask until perhaps later. But I mean, you went through a traumatic situation before you even got the ALS diagnosis. How are you able to take care of yourself kind of mentally? And you talked a little bit about building a community, but it seems like you had kind of prepared yourself. You had built the foundation for dealing with this situation before it even happened. So how are you able to kind of create, I guess, a bit of a stable platform for yourself so that this wasn't something that made you just wallow in desperation and negativity?
Yeah. God told me I was going to get ALS, and so I was prepared for it. And so when it happened, I wasn't.
You're like, thanks. I didn't get to see you earlier.
He told me he couldn't do anything about it, but I was going to get it. And it was kind of him to let me know. So, God's good about things like that. Yeah, I had rebooted my life about 3 years ago, when I left my marriage, and I kind of just started over at the age of 61. And I just thought, you know what, I've got whatever years I have left, I want to make sure I'm living them to the best of my ability. And the phrase carpe the fucking diem started. So a friend gave me a pillow with that on it, and I really started living that way, just seizing the moments and making the most of life, and making sure I was writing my own story and not letting other people write my story for me. What I find in a lot of our deconstructed lives, deconverted Christians, because family members and friends and people react negatively to that experience of us leaving the faith, oftentimes we have unwittingly given the pen to other people, and they are writing our story for us. They're causing us to live lives, secret lives, for instance, where people don't know that we're atheists. People don't know that we're not Christians anymore, or caused, in my case, sadness and depression about losing my daughters, to their reaction to my atheism, not being able to live fully who I was in my authentic, honest life in a marriage that was not working, because she remained a Christian and still does. And so I was letting other people write my story for me. And so, yeah, what you talked about is that I had begun to live my best life even before getting this diagnosis. So in a lot of ways, I was mentally prepared for something of this magnitude. I was living that way already. I just put the accelerator down when I got this diagnosis in February of last year.
Well, what were the symptoms, and what was it like? I've heard the story, but probably be good for you to say it again, like of how you kind of found out officially that you had ALS.
Yeah, that was a tough day, I'll be honest. February 26th.
I think that's a story. Like sometimes people say a tough day, and you're like, and you're like, this case, yes, you legitimate tough day.
It wasn't just wasn't a tough day because I was stuck in bad traffic or something. It was a day that altered the way I look at life and the way I live life. So yeah, that's a big day. I'd been having symptoms for months and wasn't really paying much attention to them because, little things here and there, you think maybe I'm getting soft or weak, and my hands weren't working like I thought they should, and I was having trouble doing simple tasks that shouldn't have been giving me trouble. I had a couple of marked moments where I couldn't grip a bowling ball and couldn't grip a golf club and things like that I realized something's really wrong here. But I waited till after the first of the year to start going to doctors because I knew that I would run through my insurance deductibles and all those things. So I thought, well, let's just get it all done in 1 year instead of stretching it out to 2 years. And so after a few visits to doctors and neurology referrals and all the tests that they do, there was one conclusive test that they did to, and I'm the kind of person that wants to know what's going on. I didn't want to, if I just want to deal with the truth. And so I had Googled enough symptoms to know that ALS was on the table. And so when this test was given, and I asked the neurologist to be straight with me, I asked him at the end of it, do I have ALS? And he said, yes, you have ALS. I hate to give you this diagnosis, but you have ALS. And that was early in the morning, and I was actually living in Nashville, right across the street from the hospital at Vanderbilt. So I just was able to walk home, and I was by myself. And, that wasn't daunting to me. I didn't feel like I needed somebody to hold my hand, but it was pretty sobering. They didn't offer a lot of follow-up. They said, yeah, you have ALS, and the typical prognosis is 3 to 5 years to live. And the elevator is right around the corner, and you can get dressed now.
And that's it.
That's it. So I walked home, started calling people and texting people.
So you were talking about...
I may have had a bourbon about 10 in the morning that day.
Yeah.
I may or may not have had a bourbon early.
I don't blame you for that. So you were talking about some things that you had trouble doing. Are there some activities that you just can't do anymore at this point?
Yeah. Buttoning buttons and zippers and little chores that require finger strength and dexterity. Those are challenging. Now, I can usually get something done. Sometimes I just have to wait and do it really slowly. I traveled a lot last year. This is kind of a funny story. And I got TSA, which is the best $85 you'll spend to go through security.
Oh, yeah, like the pre-check, so you can just go through.
Pre-check, yeah. So for me, it's big because then I don't have to take my belt off and my shoes off, and those things are difficult for me. But this particular day, I was having trouble getting you have to take your stuff out of your pockets to put in your bag, even with pre-check. And so I was having trouble getting my wallet out of my back pocket. And this lady and I was by myself this day. Most of the time I travel with someone, but this particular trip, I just happened to be by myself. I was meeting someone somewhere, but at the airport I was alone. And this lady was rummaging through the trash in the line. I stepped out of line, and I was struggling I just could not grip it with my fingers. I couldn't grip the little wallet thing. The finger strength just wasn't there, and I was struggling. And I saw her looking through the trash for something, and I said, "Did you lose something?" And she said, "Yeah, I lost my boarding pass. I think I threw it away." So she went on, she finally found it, and she looked up at me and said, "Did you lose something?" She saw I was struggling, and I said, "Well, no, I've got it. I just can't get to it. I can't get my wallet out of my pants. Would you reach back there and get that for me?" And she's an older lady, and she looked at me and said, "Yeah." I said, "I have ALS." I just throw it out there for people. It doesn't register with them. If I say, "I have ALS and my hands don't work, can you help me?" They just look at me kind of blankly and help me, and then they probably go and get on their phones and Google ALS and figure out what the hell I was talking about. But she did. She helped me get it out, and I went about my way. But I thought, it reduces you to, if you want to get through the day, you have to just swallow your pride and ask for help from people. And it's kind of, it could be humiliating if you let it be, that you're losing your freedom, you're losing your independence. But at the end of the day, it's just about, do I want to get this done, or do I want to be prideful and sit there in line for a couple hours trying to get my wallet out of my pocket?
Well, it's one thing to say, hey, you know what? Dying out loud, that sounds like a good, slogan. I should go around the country and around the world and talk to people about it and about being an atheist. But how do you actually get that done? Like, how did this go from an idea to something where, I'm the last atheist podcast that you've been on?
Yeah. Well, as soon as I got the diagnosis, I hired a marketing team and a PR firm, and we came up with a cool slogan, which is not what happened. Yeah, my friends, my original thought was I'm just going to travel and do what I want to do and see as many places as I can and burn through whatever money I have and just live life, and then check out. I didn't know how long I would have. It goes fast in some people, and some people it goes slow. As it turns out, it's going slower in me. So I'm progressing slower than a lot of people do. So I'm still able to do a lot of things. But after a few months of just kind of thinking, I just want to do what I want to do, a friend of mine, Marie, who I think booked the show with you, she was visiting in Nashville and saw that I was wanting to talk about my experience facing death as an atheist, and that I was not afraid to talk about it. I kind of wanted to talk about it. So she started reaching out to podcasts and secular communities and booking me on things like this. And over the course of the next 6 months of last year, we filled up the calendar with dates, and it became, I don't know where the name Dying Out Loud came from. It just kind of happened. T-shirts just kind of happened. Bracelets kind of happened. Everything kind of took on a life of its own, and people started responding to it and inviting us to come to their places and get on their shows. And so I'm happy to do it. It gives me a lot of energy, a lot of passion to be able to focus on things like this and talk about things that matter to people, that make their lives better in some small way. And if I didn't have this to do, and I've said this a lot of times, I really think I would be in a much darker place mentally than I am right now, because this really inspires me to be able to talk about and do things that seem to inspire the people.
Now, I'm sure you've had many experiences of dealing with fellow atheists, because you had to create this community after getting out of being a Christian. Have you had a lot of experiences talking to other people who have ALS?
Yeah, it becomes a club you're drafted into, and you would get to know other people who have been diagnosed as well. Bevan and I, my girlfriend and I, went to a rally in Washington, D.C. last summer, protesting the FDA because there's kind of moving slow on some treatments that show some promise, and we're trying to get them to speed up the process because, hey, we're dying here. And I've gotten to know others online and in person. I've had several people reach out to me after hearing shows like this that are diagnosed themselves or have family members who are dealing with it. So I've had occasion to interact with them, and it's a disease with a wide spectrum of results, of progression. Some people progress really fast. Some people, it starts in their hands. Some of us, it starts in their feet or their mouth. So it's all over the board. But yeah, we've gotten involved as much as we can, and will more so in the months to come with other ALS people.
Okay, I'm coming with this question on the fly, so it might be absolutely terrible, but I'm going to give it a shot. So, what would you rather have happen? Would you rather have a disease named after you, because ALS is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you like to be such a notorious atheist that after you die, Christians pass the story that you decided on your deathbed to become a Christian again?
Can I have both? No, actually,
because that was what's his name, Christopher Hitchens, Carl Sagan, or two, that there are just all these rumors like when they're on their deathbed, they're like, just kidding, I'm not an atheist.
Yeah, no, I guess since this already has a name attached to a famous baseball player, I'll have to go with B. Yeah, there's been some speculation that might happen, or that I think any of the Christians in my life now know me better than that, but you never know. There are people who are making efforts to, as I've gotten more public and have gotten a wider audience, there are a few that are coming out and saying, hey, don't you realize this is God trying to get your attention? But not a lot of that. I call bullshit on that pretty fast.
And during your time maybe studying religions, have you picked a favorite religion's heaven that you'd actually want to go to, or are you thinking no for pretty much all of them?
Well, at one point I thought the 70 virgins might be fun, but then again, virgins, I don't know. There's not a lot of experience there, so that probably wouldn't be any fun. But then also my girlfriend might have a little problem with that. Although when I'm gone, it really wouldn't matter, right? So, no, I think the idea of an afterlife is just absolutely preposterous on any level. I think it's created. It's an idea fabricated by man, because think back when most religions got started that have afterlives. That life was fucking hard. And life was short, and it was brutal, and so the idea of something coming after this was very appealing. But my point, when people ask about, does it bother you that there's no afterlife, or that this is it, and when you die the lights go out and that's it? No, it doesn't bother me. Why should it bother me? This life is pretty amazing if we stop and savor it, but it's really what we make of it, and what are you doing with it? I know life can be hard, and I know bad things happen and struggles, and it can be brutally hard, but there are moments for all of us if we're just looking for them, and that's really what I do believe with all my heart.
So how has traveling been for you? Do you have some favorite spots you've been to so far, or stories from the road?
Yeah, the road has been my favorite thing. I've decided I'm going to do that as long as I can physically do it, and as long as people want me to come talk. And the invitations are there. It's just a lot of these groups don't have a lot of money, so we're having to try to put 2 or 3 spots together and make sure that they can cover our travel costs, because we can't afford to. I'm not trying to make money on my trips. I just can't afford to lose money on them. So the travel last year, we went to some great places. Went to Toronto and Minneapolis and Houston and Philadelphia and Austin a couple of times, and Kansas City. And at every single stop, I'm always amazed at the beautiful interactions that we have as humans with each other. And that's why I do these trips. I can reach more people on platforms like this that can go all over the world. And I've connected with people all over the world from the different shows I did last year. And I love those connections. But the human interaction, the hugging of necks, the sharing of laughter and tears, and just that ability for people to look in each other's eyes and to share moments together, that is what it's all about to me. And every single stop that we made, there were just these incredible moments, unexpected moments of people just greeting after a talk, or in a Q&A session, or in a meet and greet before or after a meeting, where these just incredible connections happened. And that's what I take away, and the relationships that are formed around that go on for years afterwards, and the memories that we carry with us. That's just the beautiful part. The cities themselves I've enjoyed. A lot of times we go into a city, and Bevan and I were in Philadelphia for 3 nights, and we hardly saw any of it. But sometimes we don't get to see as many of the places as we'd like to, and do the things that we want to do because the time there is too short. But the human connection is what I'm there for, and it's really beautiful.
Well, you tend to meet up with like atheist groups. Have you ever done like a Christian group or like maybe a Unitarian?
I've done some Unitarian churches and have some more booked this year, actually. I'd love to do some Christian shows. I mean, Christian meetings. If you can get me in any churches, I'll talk about this all day long at the church. I'd do a Q&A and everything. I would love that. I just don't think they want to hear from me. They know that. I think they know that I know too much. I've been in the kitchen. I know how the sauce is made. So I'm not sure they want to go that road with me. But Unitarian churches, yeah, I think we're doing one out in LA and another one in San Francisco, and different. Yeah, we're going, like I said, we're going out west a lot this year for some reason.
Well, that doesn't sound bad. I mean, maybe there are more groups out there. I don't know. But is traveling any more difficult now since you're reaching kind of the year since you've been officially diagnosed?
Yeah, I pretty much need. Bevan's going to be with me on most of the trips. Marie's going to be there some because she's managing me. I can get it done. I'm still fairly functional. It's just everything's more challenging, and going in the hard part, I guess, about traveling is not knowing what the situation's going to be when you get there in terms of, am I going to be able to function in this space? Airports can be difficult to navigate. Everything just takes longer, and I have to allow for it and be patient and not get frustrated and just get through it. And it's so far, it is getting harder, but it's still doable. And I'm like I said, I'm going to do as much of it as I can for as long as I can. So 2020 looks to be pretty full. We're going to, after we got a couple of stops, LA and then Northern California, and then Vancouver and Utah. In between that, some places in Tennessee and Florida, Cincinnati, and then May and June we're going to be in England and Amsterdam and Munich and some places in Europe. So we're going to go pretty hard this year. It may it may kill me, but so
so yeah, go do what you're enjoying. So since you've been on a bunch of shows in the past year, was there one show that you went on and you're like, holy shit, how am I on this show?
Pretty much every one of them. Yeah, it kind of became like a freight train that I was just trying to hang on to and not fall off of. I mean, a really cool experience obviously was getting on the Atheist Experience with Matt Dillahunty, and I'd seen Matt for years and had seen the show for years, and then to be on in the studio and recording that, and that was a show that had that show has a huge audience. And after I did that show twice last year, and the reach that they have globally was mind-blowing, because I started hearing from people all over the world who reached out and connected with me and told me what my story meant to them and what I was saying that was inspiring them, and they started ordering the shirts and the bracelets and stuff, and seeing pictures from people all over the world with their stuff on. All these shows that just have that do great work and have done great work for years, and all of a sudden I'm on these shows and talking to these people. It's been a cool experience to be a part of, I guess, what's known as the activist movement, because I was just an atheist living my life and selling insurance and doing my thing and enjoying life, and I wasn't really I was active in my local group. We've got a strong ex-Christian atheist group in Nashville, where I was living at the time, and I was very involved in that, and involved online and trying to support people and encourage people and help people through the Clergy Project. I was actually on the board of the Clergy Project before I resigned after my diagnosis. So I was always involved with helping people navigate post-faith life, because it can be very daunting. But I wasn't what I'd call an activist. I was quiet on Facebook because I've got a lot of religious family, and I just didn't want to upset the apple cart too much and cause a lot of trouble. And I just kind of being quiet. But then after this, I just kind of ran out of fucks. I got no fucks left. So I'm just gonna give it all I got and raise my voice and say these things are important. Religion is doing damage to people. Not all religion, but evangelical Christianity is doing great damage to people, great damage to our country. I mean, look at our fucking president, 81% support by evangelical Christians. And I'm thinking this is too important a time for me to stay quiet. And so that's why I'm active. And so, yeah, the people, the shows I've been on, they've been doing the good work for years. You guys, you've been doing your show for 5 years, Zach. And I applaud that. And I'm glad to be a part of it and to throw my hat in the ring, so to speak. It's come at a late stage, but I'm glad that I'm able to get involved in it.
Well, one of the shows I listened to in preparation for this tonight was you were on with Seth Andrews, Thinking Atheist. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't listened to his show for a while, so he had to call in people. And the first guy who was talking to you said, what did he say? Go ahead. Well. You see if you remember this all, because you've done a bunch.
But I remember that guy. It's all about how you think. And if you think yourself well, you'll get well. Pretty much what he said, right?
Yeah, it was one of those situations where obviously Seth's dealt with a bunch of people like that, and you've probably dealt with a few yourself. And it was just like, hey, we will answer as many questions as we can for you, but if that actually worked, people would be a lot healthier, right? Because people aren't just sick because they have a bad attitude. People are sick because they're sick.
Well, I think
for the most part,
I may have told him that if that's true, why aren't you in the hospitals helping everyone in there get better just by thinking themselves better?
Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of, I chatted with Seth after that. We both were way more patient with that guy than we should have been. And both at some point we just kind of said, hey, we got to get off this call. This is ridiculous.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the atheist experience, and that was that's a lot of people who are atheists, first show. It was one of the ones I listened to first. And yeah, the way they deal with the Christian callers, because I think some people were just curious, and now people call to try to stump them, and it's just they've heard everything.
Oh God, 15
at this point, years. You're sure, let's hear this person out. Why not?
Yeah, one of the on the show there, they have the phones light up and it gives a little synopsis of what their call is about, and this one says that I have a scripture that proves God's existence, and Matt and I just rolled our eyes, and that's yeah, you haven't heard that before, right?
Yeah, this is the one. If it was out there, I think we might have heard it before. So of course you decided to become super busy with your diagnosis, but something else you're doing. So are you currently working on a book to talk about your experience? And how's that going?
Yeah, I sequestered myself for a few weeks around the holidays, the end of the year, and I've been trying to get really busy writing that book and finish. I started it some time ago, but I've really gotten busy trying to get that done because I really feel like I need to. And then there's a couple of places or a couple of folks that are interested in doing a documentary about my story. So we're talking to different people about that, trying to find the right fit for that. Those are a couple of projects that are in the works. And then I'm also going to be, or have been working with an organization called the Final Exit Network, which is a nonprofit that helps people end life on their own terms in a dignified way. And it's actually not contingent upon laws in certain states that try to coordinate physician-assisted dying. This is take it in your own hands dying. And it's a really great organization. Getting involved with them on a really strong level, kind of as a promotional person for them and a spokesperson for them, because they do great work and they help people in my situation when have the power and the control and the option of taking things into their own hands when life just becomes untenable and when the life that I'm living is no longer to the standards that I want it to be, then I want to have the freedom and control to be in control of that. And this organization does great work in helping in that regard. And I'm really happy to be working with them.
Have you already made those plans? I guess sort of tentatively, because you
tentatively in my mind. Yeah, I've got more time than I thought I might to begin with, and so I've kind of put some things on hold in terms of spending time and attention and giving attention to those things, because I've got the mechanisms in place and I've got the idea of what I need to do. I just haven't spent the time to do it because I've been doing other things. But when the time comes, I will definitely give more attention to that and make sure they help you with all the legal aspects and the paperwork and making sure everything's in order so that you are in control of the end of your life, which is the bottom line, which is as it should be.
Well, you've mentioned places you're going to go this year, and I'll include links because I'm sure you have all your kind of stops already set up for the year. But let's say people see that and go, wait, he's not coming to my town. How do we get you to your town?
Well, you raise a bucket full of money because I'm very expensive. No, I'm just kidding.
Big bucket, not a small bucket. Kind of bucket you could pour some bourbon into. Anyway,
a bourbon and a cigar.
Yeah. Do you have like a rider? Like, okay, no brown M&Ms and this type of bourbon,
I have Maker's Mark bourbon and one cigar, no shorter than 6 inches, no longer than 8 inches. Already cut with a lighter. No. It's easy. Just reach out to us. The website, daveoutloud.com. The email, daveoutloud@gmail.com. Marie manages the schedule. We will come wherever people want us to come as long as our schedule allows. All we ask is that people help us with the expenses. I have to travel with someone, so unless we can drive to it, it's a couple of airfares, either a hotel or we don't mind staying with people if they've got a decent guest room where I don't have to share a bathroom with an awkward 14-year-old teenager or something like that. I just want a private bath, and I can't do cats. Sorry, I love cats, but they don't love me. I'm allergic.
Wow.
Those are pretty much my only conditions. If there's a secular group or an organization that wants to bring us in for a talk, we love to do that. Everywhere we go, we have a meet and greet, and love to connect with people that have heard me on shows or seen me on shows, and they realize I'm coming to a town. So we'll do a meet and greet. We'll have drinks. We'll talk. We'll laugh. We'll connect. Form relationships, and then at all the talks I give, and it doesn't. I don't care about the size of the crowd. It doesn't matter to me if it's 10 people or 200 people or 1,000. I don't really care. It's just the connection with people that I love. And we do a Q&A, and we just talk. We talk about this and answer people's questions and help people navigate life. We're all in this together. None of us gets out alive, so we got to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think you like to talk, so it works out well for everybody, right?
I do like to talk.
Well, now we're getting toward the end. Do you have any special skills or perhaps a joke that you could share with the audience?
Oh, geez, I'm terrible at jokes. I'm more of just quick wit in the midst of a conversation, so I don't do jokes. Any special talents or things that I had have pretty much gone away with the ALS. So I all I can do is talk, man. And when I lose the ability to do that, it's going to be challenging. So let's hope that's the last thing that goes.
Well, do you do karaoke?
Juggle.
Juggle. Well, you could say I did it like this and have like no illusions do it behind you because he still has the skills apparently. So there you go. He's a fill-in person. Okay, well, you've mentioned it before, but since we're toward the end here, where can people track you down?
Well, the easiest thing is daveoutloud.com. That's easy to remember. Dying Out Loud was taken, so it's daveoutloud.com. daveoutloud@gmail gets to Marie and me, and she can schedule any kind of interviews or look at all the schedule, all my travel itineraries on there. Also, the Facebook page, my name, Dave Warnock, and then Dying Out Loud is the Facebook page, and that's where everything ends up getting posted, and it's linked from the website. So, if we're coming to a town near you, come see us, meet us. We'd love that. If we're not coming to a town near you, then book us in. We'll come see you. We are pretty much full through, Bevan and I are looking at the calendar. I don't have any, starting with this Sunday, I don't have any weekends open until July. So first half of the year is pretty full already. But after July, we've got the rest of the year. We'll come see you.
We'll just have a little patience, people, and you can get some Dave time.
Patience, but don't wait too long because
not too patient. Yeah, exactly. So, I think you mentioned that before, but it's good that it's marketing. You just keep saying the message over and over again. People will catch on eventually. Well, thank you, Dave, for being on tonight. It's been a lot of fun. I'm glad you're able to share your story. Finally,
thanks for having me, Zach. Yeah, thanks for being patient with me and us getting this rescheduled.
Well, thanks for being on. It was a great show.
All right, man. Catch up with you soon.
Sounds good.